There are many claims and counterclaims on behalf of various fertiliser products, whether for conventional or biological farming systems. It's not surprising there's a degree of confusion among those trying to decide the best course of action for their particular situation. Until recently, there's been little research done in this area, but that's beginning to change. Dr. Peter Espie works for independent research company AgScience. He's been carrying out some trials on David Crutchley's property.
We're doing fertiliser research for 4 different companies on Shortlands, and we've got 10 different research trials totalling over 600 plots. The products that have been used very widely on Shortlands' development program are also the products that we've been testing to actually measure their biological effect. One of the criticisms of people who've used alternative fertilisers is that it's anecdotal, what they see on the farm, but it hasn't been supported by empirical, hard, robust science. So our job is to provide that. You ready to mark out the plot, David?
Yeah, okay.
Yep. The research hasn't been done prior to now, partly because of funding. It's been very difficult to obtain research funding for this kind of research. It's from observation of biological farms in the North Island. The assessment was that the farm production on a scale of 10 was 11. There was no disagreement about that. But the interpretation of why that biological farm was producing, one was that they were simply mining capital dressings of previous phosphatic fertilisers. And the second was that it was due to exceptional farm management. So we tested those as scientific hypotheses because they're testable. So we eliminated David's management from our trials, so that's not a factor. And then we put trials down that have never ever been fertilised in 150 years and looked for a biological response. If they were simply mining applied levels of previous phosphate, you'd expect no response. We found there was a real response, and therefore that explanatory theory is incorrect. We've tested urea products against biological nitrogen supplying products. We've tested natural supplying phosphate products against superphosphate. What we found is that the biologicals exceed or equal superphosphate under reputable, standard scientific protocols. And those differences are statistically significant, which means that those results are highly unlikely to arise by chance. You've heard David talk about using humate. And in the discussions about humate, there's a lot of different viewpoints. On Shortlands, when we looked at testing humate, we found it gave a positive response and it increased the action of pea fertilisers. That was followed up by another company, Southern Humates Limited, who did a major research trial down in Southland. The humate gave an increase in the first harvest of a 53% increase compared with urea. The second was 51%. This last harvest we did gave an 85% increase, and that's under properly replicated science trials. There was a second trial done by the Growing Group, which is based in Nelson, with humate on nitrogen pastures on a very large dairy farm in the Maniatoto. The average result of that was a 46% increase. Now, these are properly replicated results that show that humate interacting with nitrogen is improving the fertiliser efficiency, and they're real.
Over here, David.
We're on the hill country of Shortlands. This is the endowment Manuka block. We're on acid high country soils, so we then perform the same experiments as we do on the low country soils. And what we're doing is we're adding biological stimulants, lime and phosphorus in both superphosphate and guano, and then looking at the lime by phosphorus interaction. And the goal here is to see what we need to produce good high quality pasture on low producing hill land. Yeah, with the lime and the super, we're getting 70% clover cover here, whereas on the control, which is this next plot over here, it's 80% Horacium and low fertility brown top, and there's no clover here at all. These are very acid soils. Their pH is 5.2, and they've got very high levels of soluble aluminium. And the soluble aluminium does two things. It stops clover growth, it inhibits root growth of grasses, and it also locks up your phosphorus. Adding lime and adding guano addresses those limitations and unlocks the door to productivity. What we found consistently is that the biologicals that's stimulating the soil microbial subsystems have been giving equal or superior results to using the widely used superphosphate or nitrogen urea fertilisers. In terms of actual feed grown, the maximum production we're getting is over 110 kilograms of dry matter per day. with these treatments and the feed quality. We did a feed palatability trial, and where foliar fertiliser was applied, 99% of the plots were eaten. Where conventional was applied, 0 was eaten. So it improves palatability. One of the major issues for eastern South Island high country is Hericium or hawkweeds. It was present in Canterbury in 1858, and it has spread right throughout the eastern South Island high country, and it's reducing native biodiversity, and it's also reducing pasture feed quality. And that's why traditional high country pastoralism is no longer viable, because Hericium is taking over large areas of land that used to support sheep that no longer can do so. What we found with early research done by Neil Miller from Southfert was that boron could give up to 100% Hericium control. Healthy Soils Research Director George Shuttleworth then took the idea of combining the boron control with adding a biological stimulant to then look at how that could actually increase grass growth on unimproved native country. This is a 2-year trial. It's present here, it's been replicated on other properties in the Maniatoto, and the results are showing that we've got almost 100% Hericium control. It's got major implications for the high country farmers, because one of the attractions of high country farming is taking low productive land and turning into highly productive land, which is exactly what David's been doing on Shortlands. So there's enormous potential in the high country, and this is unlocking the door of that potential. The first thing is you've got to look at what science tells you. I cannot strongly emphasise enough that you've got to have people supporting product claims with hard science that show a product works, or how much it works by, or how much it doesn't work by. So the first thing is look very critically at any claims. Ask them to produce science to show that their products work. And that's just common for any fertiliser from any company, no matter what you're using.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.